Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Hope everyone's well. I know everyone is sidetracked by the coronavirus, but as we're working from home a lot more now, we're using our personal devices. There's a surge in cybercrime. IT security becomes even more important. So really well done to everyone who's here. My name is Yugansh. I'm the one here on the left. That's my colleague Alex, who heads up marketing. We can have a vote towards the end on who's the better looking out of these mugshots. I am the technology manager at a company called Lucidica. I've been at the company for about 3.5 years, and overall in the industry, I have just over 10 years of experience. Now, the company Lucidica, we're an IT company based in London, so we offer a range of IT services, so that's support, project work, security and compliance, look after licensing for our clients, just the whole shebang. And we're a generally friendly bunch, so if you're around in Shoreditch, then feel free to pop in. Maybe not in the next month or so. So personally, I got into IT security a few years ago when I saw a malicious bank transfer, just because of a couple of emails going back and forth. One of these emails were faked, so the person making the money transfer didn't realize it was going to someone else's bank account. So that's my niche. Not faking these emails, but looking at security events daily for small and medium businesses. And that's what I've been doing for the last few years. I'm passionate about this, and I have a very good idea of what we should be doing as a small business or a medium business, the things we should be looking out for, and the things we should be speaking about internally. Okay, so this is what we're going to be covering. I'm going to start speaking about the most current hacking methods. So these are the most pressing issues at the moment, most popular, and this is what we need to be aware of right now. And also, I'll give you the solutions as well. So what we can be doing to mitigate the risk here with these attacks. I'm going to cover working from home. So the current hacking methods will still apply. But of course, like I say, as we're working from home a lot more now, I'll just touch on a couple of specific tips on what we should be looking out for. And that's synonymous with bringing in your own device. So as you let your employees, your colleagues bring in their mobile phones, and they're having company emails on there, I'll just speak a bit about that and how we can make sure that's secure. I'll cover an audit. So this is what your IT company, or if you have a freelancer or a contractor, should be looking at, or maybe yourself if you're fairly tech savvy. It's just a general checklist of these are the things in my network. So I want to make sure every 6 months I'm doing a check of these things. I'll then talk about Lucidica's offering, and we'll do a quick Q&A in the end as well. And the way you can ask questions, there should be a pane on the right hand side of this event. If you don't see this, then you can click this little icon. It will turn this pane off and on. And if you think of a question, just feel free to type that in. My colleague Alex is also on the call. We'll be collecting these, and like I said, we'll go through them at the end. Okay, let's crack on. Let's not crack on. Just a couple of other reminders really quickly. If you can please refrain from recording this. Alex is recording the webinar at the moment, and if it comes out okay in terms of quality, we can share it. There isn't anything sensitive going on here, so yeah. We'll also be sending some information packs and also these slides as well. So just relax, take the information in, of course, make some notes as well, but we will be sending this around as well. Okay, crack on. So we're going to be talking about the most current threats, and I'll start with everyone's favorite, passwords. Now, the reason I'm starting here is because passwords are the forefront of cybersecurity. Anytime there's an attack, normally, not all the time, but normally the hacker or the organization is trying to get to someone's password. Now, what's the number one tip that we have with passwords all the time is not writing them down. And that includes having something like an Excel spreadsheet. So this advice still applies. It's been around for years and years and years. So the very first thing is we need to stop writing these down. on Post-its, of course, and even on our Word documents, Excel documents as well. Just because we can't control these documents, we can't control what happens to that Excel spreadsheet that's sitting on the hard drive for our laptop or our computer. It doesn't matter if it's password protected, because it still doesn't promote a good password practice. So the people who are using generating the passwords can still be using weak passwords as we're using an Excel spreadsheet. Now the solution here, actually before I show you the solution, I just want to show you one thing which just kind of puzzled me. I saw this on Amazon, and this just goes against everything that we can say about passwords. This is a diary where you can record your passwords. And I see the appeal here. I see why, we've got 1,000 different websites now. So yes, we don't want to be using something like this. If you see a diary like this, burn it, or burn the person. Don't do that. So what we want to be doing to record passwords is using something called a password manager, which you may have heard of, you may not have heard of. So this is a digital version of this diary. I've got my email, I've got my password, so this is my master password. This is the only password I need to remember, so I want to make sure this is the most secure thing I can think of. As I type that in, the manager will open up my diary, so my collection of the passwords I have. Here we go. Take a second, but here we go. So this is essentially my diary. It's the same thing as this, but I've got all my passwords, all my accounts in here. And this is also one of the reasons why I said not to record this, because I don't want people knowing I shop at Asda. But let's say I've had a lifestyle change. I've decided to shop at Waitrose, so I've got an account there. I'll just add the account in here. So that's my website. Type in the name, my username. So Waitrose, whatever my username is, and whatever my password is. And then it gets stored, as I click save, it gets stored in this list. And this password manager comes with me. So anytime that I want to, log onto a new machine, I can download the password manager. Or if I have my phone on me, then there's an app for this for this manager as well. So we want to be using something like that to store our passwords. What's the second thing we always hear about passwords? What's the second tip? It's not reusing the same password. And this picture for me pretty much sums it up. And I'll try and give you a semi-technical explanation as to why this is so important. So let's say I'm taking the example of Facebook, and just a bit of a disclaimer. If I'm using an organization or a product, it's not to encourage it or discourage it. It's just by chance that I've decided to use Facebook, just because it's popular. So let's say I'm logging in, I've got my email, I've got my password, I click login. Now what Facebook or any website will do is it will check the email and password I'm typing in against a database. So it will say, of course, okay, Yugansh is typing in this password. Does this password match in my database? Yes, it does. I'm gonna let him in, or otherwise. And in very simple terms, this is what Facebook's database or a website's database looks like. So we've got the basic details like name, we've got someone's username, my email, or again, username. This is my actual Facebook password. And this isn't kept in the database like this. It's actually kept in this format. So jumbled up letters, which means it's encrypted. And in other words, that's basically this password is locked. And the only people who have the key for this are Facebook or yourself. So no one can unlock this password. This is a one-way function normally. There's just no going back from this to this plain text to the actual password. And this is done because just in case this database leaks and gets out on the internet. So as it gets out, the hacker, yes, they have your email address, which is not a good thing, of course, but at least the password is in an encrypted fashion. It's a locked password. Now, let's assume this database does get leaked. Someone's on a Facebook server and they've managed to log in and get this database, which isn't actually a very uncommon occurrence. This happens fairly regularly. In fact, we've had 7.9 billion records breached in 2019 alone. That's more than the global population. And I'm not kidding. I just started using Facebook as a password, as an example, and I just Googled, Facebook breaches. They actually had a breach end of last year, and it was actually particularly bad because they admitted that they were holding passwords in the plain text format. So I would say, just as a precaution, if you haven't changed your Facebook passwords in the last 5 months, I would change that password. So this database gets leaked. The hacker has this password, which is okay for us. Okay, it's not the end of the world because they can't know what this is. Only Facebook have the key here. Apart from, there are two issues. If we're using a weak or if we're using some sort of a popular password. And what this means is, we've heard the advice, it's a weak password if it's not at least 8 characters. And if it's a strong password, it needs to have at least 1 capital letter, 1 lowercase, and a symbol. My tip is, I like to say, if you can pronounce your password, even with numbers in there, if you can somehow say it, it's a weak password. In fact, you shouldn't even know what your password is, and I'll come back to that in a second. So going back to this database that's now been leaked on the internet, what can the hacker do? They can't unlock this straight away, but they can use another database on the internet to see if someone's done it for them, if someone has actually unlocked this password. And I'll show you one of the websites that can do this. So I've got my encrypted password, my locked password in here. And all I'll do is, oh, good. Just prove I'm human. I'm a hacker, but I'm still human. Okay, crack hashes. There's my password. So although this isn't doing an instant, conversion here, it's not unlocking this password. It's just running this against a database and it's seeing if someone's done it for us. If you find out a bit more about this website, this list that it's being compared against contains every word list, dictionary word, and password database this person could find on the internet. This is a 15 gigabit file of just words and words. So LinkedIn and eHarmony have had breaches, quite famous breaches recently. So if we look at some of these passwords as an example, so these are some of the passwords that were unlocked, and I would say these aren't particularly weak passwords. Some of them have symbols. They at least follow 2 of the 3 tips of having an 8-character password: a capital letter, a symbol. But this comes back to what I was saying before, in that I can pronounce most of these passwords. So let's say we've got the code and this database doesn't know what this password is. There is another way, another common way this password can be unlocked, and that's something called brute force, which is literally using force. Basically, it's saying, okay, I'm going to try and guess this password by starting from the letter A, and I'm going to run through a dictionary of words and letters and combinations of numbers. So in this example, I'm going to start with A, then I'm going to go here, A, S, A, and all the numbers and all the combinations in between. This is just a snippet of the word list. And we think this will take a while. It's going to take a computer ages, and a computer is doing this, not a human. But in fact, if we go here, so this will show me how long it will take for a computer to find out what a password is, and it's going to run through the dictionary. So let's say I type in my weak password, which was test123. It's going to take a computer less than a second, and that's in 2015. And this is using a normal PC. This is, if you've bought a PC in the last 2 years, there's a good chance that PC is more powerful than this one. In fact, these password guesses will be done by tens and hundreds of servers and all of their CPU combined. So all of the mathematical power combined running through these numbers. So this will be infinitely lower. Let's use another common password that people use. People love using names. So let's go Alex 123. It's going to take me an hour, 2 hours to crack this password. Actually, the computer, I'm not even doing anything here. And let's start following the principles. So let's say, okay, I know I should use a capital letter. Now that puts it up to 3 days. I know I should use at least 8 characters. Puts it up to 7 months. Still not secure password at all by any means. This is 2015, so let's go 2020, 4 months. This is the other point. This is what happens to the server power or the computer power in a few years' time. So if your password is relatively secure in 2020, just think about what's going to happen to that password in a couple of years' time. And let's add a symbol. That changes things completely. This is why it's so important to be following those principles, to be adding symbols. So what I would do is, what I would recommend not knowing what your password is. This goes for our employees, everyone working in our company. We should not know what the password is that we're using. The password manager that we're using should know that. So we can use this to generate a password for us. This is the password we should be using. So if we're signing up to, I don't know, a new website, like we're signing up to a new Facebook account, we want a password, this is the password to use. And you can store this password in here. So let's copy this. Let's get rid of that. If I pop this in here, I don't think I copied that. Let's try that again. Okay. I did. Infinity. So theoretically, there's nothing that can crack this password at the moment. Okay. Now, the other couple of things that are quite important when it comes to password management is something like a password manager shows you your security score. So it shows you something like this. So it says, look, of course, I know what your passwords are because you use me. You've got 58 passwords in me. Out of 100, your score is a 70. I can see there are 12 compromised passwords. So the manager will tell us, look, there's been a leak on a certain website. And the idea is, if a website gets leaked or breached and someone finds out what your password is there, they will exploit the human condition of trying to use the same password for different websites or just changing the character, which is why the manager is so important with generating completely random passwords and just storing them. Finally, password sharing. So as we're sharing our passwords within the team, the manager would normally have a feature that will allow you to share the password securely. So you can even go as far as saying, look, I want my finance person to have the password to Sage or Xero, but I don't want them to see what the password is. So they can still log in, but they don't have a record of the password. And if you have a contractor or a freelancer, this becomes a must. You can even get the passwords to expire. So you can say, okay, I'm going to share this password with this contractor or a freelancer in a couple of months' time. Although they can't see this password, I just want to have another layer of security and make sure that this password expires for them. Cool. So that's passwords. We're done with passwords. Hooray. So the advice of not writing them down still applies. We want to be using a different secure password for every website, and this is a must now. This is an absolute must. Because think about your employees coming to work. They are going to be using, or your colleagues, they are going to be using the same password as their personal accounts, the personal email, the personal Facebook. They are going to start blending those passwords into work. Because it's human nature, we're all going to do it. How else are we going to remember all these different passwords that we've got going on? Every employee should have this manager. Okay. So we want to be using a company password manager for each employee. If you have an IT company, then check with them. They must use a password manager themselves, and they could put this manager out as a service. It needs to be managed from a central portal, because if an employee leaves the company, you want to make sure these passwords are disposed of securely, and the person who's leaving doesn't have access to the company passwords. The other solution with passwords is to set up two-factor authentication, which I'm sure most of you would have seen before. This is when you try and log into a website, you type in your password, and the website, in this case Google, will say, okay, password's right, but I'm going to send you a text message as well, just to confirm you say you are who you say. This text message is the second factor. So the idea is someone does know your password. They also have to have your phone, or in this case SMS, to use that password. So we'll now move on to the second, probably the most important threat at the moment, which is called phishing. So this is probably the #1 attack that's happening at the moment, and this is what businesses need to be shouting about. Small businesses especially, and charities need to be shouting about, talking internally and making this the priority. Phishing and passwords go hand in hand. What the idea is, if someone has your password, they'll try and send a phishing email, and if someone has sent you a phishing email, normally they're trying to go for your password. What is phishing? It's essentially a fake email that looks like it's an email coming from someone that you recognize. So this is, I'll show you a couple of examples here, so it makes a bit more sense. This has increased during the coronavirus outbreak. So this is actually more important nowadays when people are working from home, and malicious organizations are taking advantage of this and sending these emails a lot more now. And we have two main types here. So we have regular phishing, and we have something called spear phishing, which is a bit more ominous. So I'll show you 3 examples of what a phishing emails look like, and then I'll come to what a spear phishing email is. This is a very basic example. So this is an email that's not from Netflix, but looks like it is. It's asking for your card information. It's going to try and get you to click on this link. As you click on this link, there's a fake login page. You log in, you give away your Netflix password and probably your card details, if you've gone that far. This is a bit more relevant and a bit more common in a business scenario. So if you're using Office 365, or if you're not, these emails will be sent to 100,000 emails, just because this is a guess for them that chances are, if I'm sending out an email like this one to 100,000 people, at least half will be using something like Office 365 or G Suite or Dropbox, OneDrive, whatever. So the idea is you click on this link, you get taken to a bogus Office 365 page, you sign in, and your credentials are gone. The Q here is the domain. This is obviously a fake domain. But what's changed with these fake websites? Well, a lot of the times they are actually quite close to the real Office 365 domain, so they'll maybe have an extra O and some numbers. So it, from a human's eye, it doesn't look like this is particularly malicious. And nowadays they have this green padlock, which means these websites have actually bought a certificate. They have to buy something to make this website secure, because it's a lucrative business. They can invest that money. So your web browser now doesn't warn you that this is a fake website. As far as it knows, it's got a certificate, it's valid. Before this gets reported, which could be a few days, could be a few weeks, it's going to steal a hell of a lot of user credentials. The third example is a bit of a scenario here. So let's say you're waiting for a package from DHL, and there's been a leak with the DHL database, and your email addresses have leaked somehow. You can say with some confidence, if that happens, you can expect an email like this one that basically says, Of course, you're expecting a package. It's a fake email. It's going to try and get you to download something or click on a link and take your passwords or card information. And this is a bit more targeted. So in the previous example, those emails were just sent out on a whim, and these can as well. But these fake emails rely on the fact that, okay, you are actually expecting something. So the chances of you clicking on this is actually quite high. Not you personally, but generally as a public. So because this is a bit more targeted, this starts to go slightly towards the second type of phishing, which is spear phishing. So with phishing, you have one malicious email that gets sent to many companies, and with spear phishing, which is just a variation of phishing, it's one bad email that gets sent to one person or one company. If you've seen a spear phishing email, then run. And I'll show you a few examples. This is the first one. Give you 10 seconds to have a quick read. So something like this is essentially blackmail. I said earlier that passwords and phishing go hand in hand. They're like best friends. So this password that maybe you were using at some point, or are still using more likely, was leaked on a website that maybe, I don't know, you signed up to 2 years ago, and you recognize this password and you're like, holy shit. Grabs your attention, and this one isn't actually asking you to click on a link. It's asking you to transfer some money in the form of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin can't be traced. So if I don't know, if this gets reported to the police, first of all, it's probably coming from an international source, and it's annoying, but there isn't actually international law at the moment that holds these people accountable. Plus, no one can trace Bitcoin as things stand, effectively. So if you see an email like this one, don't worry about it too much. The only thing you want to be worrying about is where have you used that password, and go back to those websites and just either delete your account if it's an old website or change these passwords. Again, this is where a manager comes in, because with the manager, it will tell you before you see these emails that, look, this website that you signed up to 2 years ago has been breached. Second example. This is an email from my colleague Alex, and it's sent to me. So it's an email from Lucidica to Lucidica. It's a fake email, so he didn't send that email. And it's a link. It's a very basic email. It's asking me to review some files, quite a cryptic one. And it's taking me to a files.fm page. So if I click on there, it will take me to a fake OneDrive or SharePoint page. I'll type in my details and my email details are gone. Now, there are 3 conditions to this email. Alex didn't send this email. His password has not been breached. And no one else has access to his account. So no one's been delegated to be able to send as Alex. So how the hell did that email end up in my mailbox? Now, to explain that, I'll briefly explain just the nature of emails. And I'll use an analogy here. Let's say you received a letter from the Queen, as you do. That letter's got a seal, got a red seal on there. As you receive this letter, you see the seal intact. It's not been tampered with. It's been signed off by the Queen. We can safely assume that that letter has been sent by the Queen. On the other hand, if you receive a letter pretending to be from the Queen and it doesn't have the seal, you can then assume that this is an impersonation. Someone's trying to pretend to be the Queen. But the point is that the letter did get delivered to you. There's nothing stopping anything, or stopping this letter from reaching you, even though it's an impersonation. Now, the seal analogy is quite close to how emails work. So the person who's sending this email, so Alex at lucidica.com, he should be authorized. So he should have the seal to be able to send at lucidica.com. In other words, of course, he should be able to log in here. But in this case, his password has not been breached and he's not sent this email. So as this email goes through the internet servers, the internet will say, hold on a minute, this doesn't have a lucidica.com seal on there. which means this is an impersonation attempt. Someone's pretending to be Alex. That's how normally emails would work. But does the internet always stop these emails? It does depend on some protection that you have to set up, which is fairly common nowadays. Assuming we've done that, do these emails always get blocked? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So let's do a quick spear phishing attack. Let's say I'll pick Lucidica because I don't want to get sued. Let's say I'll pick Lucidica. I'll Google Lucidica. I'm like, okay, this company looks like it's got a bit of money. Let's go here. Let's try and send an email pretending I'm the boss. So who's the boss? This is our team. Something's gone wrong here. I think this should be at the top, but anyway, I'll get that checked out. So we've got Thomas Jeffs. He looks like a pretty important guy. Whatever. So let's Google Thomas J. Lucidica. I'm looking for his email address, which isn't particularly hard to find. This is just an example. Of course, I can go to yale.co.uk. We have directories there. I can go to Companies House directly. So this is just a simple example that I'm showing you. Here's his email. So now I know this company uses first name last name at lucidica.com. I'll copy that. And I will try and send an email from him without having a seal. So I'll say, okay, email from Thomas Jeffs at lucidica.com. And let's say, I want to target someone here because I want to target someone so that they think the email's coming from Thomas Jeffs within the company. And there's got to be money involved, of course. This person looks important. She's a finance and admin assistant who I'm looking for someone who looks at payroll. Maybe her, but I'll take my chances. If I do this for 100 companies, I'll get at least 10 right? So in this case, I'm sending this email to a Gmail because with Lucidica, this will get blocked. But it's Gmail. It's a widely used system. In fact, the cloud system G Suite uses Gmail. And I'll say something like this. I'll say, subject pay. Hi, Maria. I don't have reception at the moment, but this is fairly urgent and confidential. It looks like we've made a mistake with Anastasia's pay. Anastasia also looks fairly important. She's the office manager. We made a mistake for the last 6 months. She's not happy about this, blah, blah, blah. Can we please send her the money back? And this will make it sound a little bit more urgent. Like, keep this on the low. I'll be speaking to a lawyer. You're the finance person, so maybe you're at fault here, blah, blah, blah. Let me know about this, and I'll call you this afternoon. I'll send this email. Now look how this email lands in the mailbox. It's actually landing as Thomas Jeffs. This hasn't come from his inbox, from Thomas Jeffs himself. So if your employees, if your colleagues are seeing these emails come through, what are the chances they'll react on this, especially if the sum isn't that high? If it's it's a £200 sum or a £2,000 sum, they'll make that transfer. At least half of the people who are attending here, at least half of the accounts people will make this transfer, statistically. So it all sounds a bit ominous, but don't worry. I just want to show you another example. So this is a fairly common one as well. So there's a difference here between this email and the previous one. And it's somewhere here. Does anyone spot it? Oh. Excuse me a second. I just had to drag my PowerPoint across the other way. Okay, let's do that. Let's try that again. Okay, so there is a difference. There's a funny I character here. And now, if I own this domain, because this isn't lucidica.com anymore, this is lus, whatever that is, dica.com. If I've bought that and I send an email from there, I now own the seal. I have authority to send as that domain. I become the queen, essentially. And other common examples are, they'll just add an A in the end. These characters will be a lot more cryptic. And we also have to slightly worry about this example, which is, okay, so no one in the company has been targeted or spearphished in any way. But what about your external people? What happens if you're dealing with an external customer and their password's been breached or they've been spearphished? How would you tell? So in this case, Tony's our client. He's emailed us saying, look, I've changed my bank account details. We have nothing to suspect her. We have no idea that Tony's been breached somehow. So I hope you'll all agree, this is quite difficult to detect and see. And unfortunately, these things are happening right now. It's bloody annoying, but these are becoming smarter. And this is the trend. And this is the #1 way we're seeing small businesses hit at the moment. So we've got a few solutions. #1 is an anti-phishing tool. So this is something that just stops most of the emails that I've just shown you. And it's based on artificial intelligence. So if you're picking an anti-phishing tool, this is different to a spam filter. The spam filter is just going to look at, the emails from Africa, and they're asking for asking to give you money. They're a bit more than that, but we want to be looking at a specific anti-phishing tool. Now, ideally based on artificial intelligence or machine learning, and that machine learning bit of it will learn how you communicate with your clients, with your contacts in your address book. And if it realizes that the emails coming back now have a slightly different grammar, or there's just something not right about that email, it could be language, like I say, grammar, anything, it will flag that email. So it just takes away that manual human element from it a little bit. For example, in this email, the other thing it will do is this link is obviously malicious, so it's taking me to a dodgy website. If I hover over this link now, it will turn it into a safe link. And what this tool is doing is it's essentially scanning the link before letting us go to what's on the other side. So as I click this, I get this message. So it says this is clearly a phishing message. It will also block emails like this one. So where someone's trying to impersonate your domain. Again, very difficult to spot. You can have someone sit there and look at your organization's email, every single email, and they'll miss a few. So we need to be using some sort of a tool here just because of how serious this is. It also does the standard stuff, but a bit more and just in a smarter way. So it will scan your attachments, but it's not going to deliver these attachments before they get scanned on in this case, I'm using a Microsoft product. In this case, it's going to be scanned on a Microsoft virtual machine first. So this is a PC somewhere in the cloud that Microsoft are opening these attachments on first before they get delivered to you. This is a screenshot that I wanted to show you. This is some metrics on the tool that we use. And it says this I took 2 days ago when preparing for these slides. And it says in the last 7 days, this tool has blocked 65 advanced impersonation and spear phishing threads. That's almost 10 emails a day. You think if 10 emails a day get the way through, maybe 5 will get through realistically to your employees, to your colleagues. It's almost guaranteed someone will click that link in a 6-month period. So we've got to start getting ahead of these things. So that's phishing. Okay, so what phishing is a fake email pretending to be someone else. That's all it is. Simple. This one's more popular now, and this one's the dangerous one, which is phishing also has its results. But spear phishing, when someone is targeting you, and it breaks my heart that someone has started to target small businesses, and I would have never thought that people would sit in these countries just targeting actual small businesses and medium businesses. And charities as well. In fact, charities have it worse. They normally lead to a password compromise or a bank transfer. I've got some stats here just because I want to point out how important this is. So if you've had some sort of a breach, those people get recorded on a database. And 15%, so if someone's had a breach in a company, there's a 15% chance that they'll be successfully phished again within the year. That's a pretty horrendous stat. All these fake websites that look like Office 365 or G Suite, Google Drive, whatever, 1.5 million are set up every month. So there is big business here. 30% of phishing messages are opened by the targeted users. So that's 1 in almost 3 employees open these messages, and 1 in 5 click on them. This is America, but again, it's a pretty staggering stat. They've reported 12 billion in losses in America overall, based on phishing attacks. City of London Police say 19 million in losses in 2019. So what were our solutions? Number 1, you see a payment change, you shout, and you make sure you call that person if they're saying things like, something has changed. And you just drill this into the people who are in your company dealing with payments. This is cliche, this is generic, never click on a link if you expect it. I have to put this in here because of course it's official advice, but we never follow this, do we? As a company, we see links and for some reason we click on them, and I've made the mistake of this. Everyone does it, it's human nature. The other thing we want to keep doing is train our staff. We have to be shouting and speaking about these emails internally. We should even have posters. At Lucidica, we can give you free posters for this. This is how passionate we feel about phishing. We can give you posters to stick on your wall and that just say, stop clicking on links, stop. These are the phishing emails. Stop falling for them. But realistically, we need to train them on what the recent ones are because they always changed. The one that was blackmailing you with your password didn't exist until recently. So these things always change. So we want to be using some sort of a simulation tool. There are loads of these on the internet. And what this tool will do, it will send your staff or your business emails, fake emails, and it trains them instantly. So if they click on a link, they get presented a fake link, they get presented with this. Of course, you've clicked on something dodgy. There's instant learning there. And in the end, you'll get a report of who's clicked on what and how many people in your business have clicked on this. So we do this at Lucidica, we do this for our clients. If we see more than 20% of the company have clicked on the links, we'll then go in and train the staff on phishing. So just speak to your IT company and talk to them about this phishing simulation that you should be doing now. And some sort of phishing tool as well. So the product I was talking about, Microsoft ATP. I like this one. We like this one particularly just because we have a good amount of Office 365 clients. So if you're using 365, then there is something like that to use. Cool. We're nearly there, guys. We're nearly there. Stay with me. Stay with me. So threat number 3, email rules. Now this happens once your password is gone. So I don't know if someone's had a weak password and their website's had a breach, or if they've received an email and they've clicked on the link and the password's gone. Within a few hours, as a hacker, once I've got their passwords, I haven't got the time to log into their email and scan through all these different emails that I've got and try and figure out if they're a finance person or if I'm trying to target a specific industry, if they work in that industry or whatever. I just want to sit on my computer and wait for these emails to come in and essentially create a short list. So this is what they'll do. You've given them your password. The next thing they will do is they will log into your account. They'll do this remotely using a script of some sort. So as a hacker, I'll now create a rule in your inbox that will say something like, or do something like forwarding any emails with keywords like payment or finance or payroll. So as the employee, as a finance person, I've clicked on the link, I've given my password away, the rule's been set up, and I have no idea what's happened. Everything's happened in the background. So when you go away today, just check your rules just in case. Okay, so these rules are being forwarded to an external email address, the hacker's email address. What they'll do is they'll sit quietly until you're requesting a payment from a client or vice versa, and then they'll intercept and say, you know what, my bank account details have changed. One of our oldest clients lost £250,000. The supplier paid the wrong bank account because of this, and the supplier had 3 levels of compliance. 3 levels of compliance. It just staggers me, absolutely staggers me. So this is serious stuff. So this, yes, the tools help, of course. Anti-phishing, we're training our staff using some sort of simulation, actually doing the testing with them, but no technology or amount of training in the world will stop these emails coming in. Some of them still seep through. So we've got to make sure that once they're in and this happens, that we get some sort of alerting set up. So what we'll do is, this is what we do at Lucidica. So one of our clients, they get breached and they have one of our security services, will get these alerts. So this alert will say, look, this person, Alex, has set up a forwarding rule to an email address. Nowadays, there's no reason why we should be forwarding our emails to an external email address. This doesn't stop it, it just tells us. So worst case scenario, someone's in your emails, they've clicked on a link, they set up a rule, we will find out as soon as the rule's set up, and an email will go to us and an email will go to you. So your IT company, speak to them about this as well. They should be doing something like this, or whoever deals with your IT. There are other rules to set up. So we've got elevation of privileges. So if someone tries to become an administrator on your accounts, we want to be notified of that. Suspicious email sending patterns. So if someone's email is being used as spam, the other technique they use is they just use, once they're in your email, they just use your email as a zombie. So now they're sending you emails and then your emails get sent to someone else and then you become the person who's phishing. So it's a bit harder to track where the attack's coming from. So get an email if that happens. This is probably the most important one that I spoke about, in my opinion. So forwarding alerts. So if someone's forwarding an email to an external email address, there's no reason why that should be happening nowadays. If you're using SharePoint or OneDrive and someone's accidentally shared a bunch of files, or someone's just being malicious and just sharing loads of files with someone external, get alerted. And an impossible travel sign-in, which is if someone's logging in from America 30 minutes ago and now they're in London, it's just physically impossible to do that. Chances are someone in the USA has got their password. Okay. Cool. So that were the current hacking methods and the most pressing things that we should be looking at as a small business or a medium business. So we covered passwords, we covered spear phishing, email rules, and the final thing I want to mention here as well, if you've had a breach, so if someone's password's leaked, if you've had emails being forwarded, then it does need to be reported to the Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours. There is a self-assessment on their page, or just use this link when we send this around as well. So this was the majority of the webinar. So now it's going to be a bit of note taking. I'm sure you've been taking notes already, but I'm just going to whiz through the rest. So not long to go. Okay. Section 2, working from home. So the advice that I said before still exists, still applies, and applies big time. It's more important now to be looking at our phishing solutions and training the staff and talking about these phishing emails internally, just calling everyone that's working from home and just saying, look, you see a link that you're not expecting, don't click on the link, just send it to the IT company. So the number one thing you want to check when you're working from home, especially if it's a personal device, are updates. So with Windows 10, we want to be on at least version 1809, and you can get there by going to start, typing in WinVer, pressing enter. A box will come up. Anything below 1809, it means that the updates aren't set up, or the machine's updated and it's not receiving updates. On the Mac, it needs to be at least, I would say, High Sierra. It could actually be a lower version than this, but if it's a relatively decent Mac, 5 years old, there's no reason why it shouldn't be on High Sierra as well. So that's my recommendation there. And the reason updates are very important is because updates fill in the vulnerabilities found in the software. So as Microsoft are releasing up Windows 10, there will be some sort of code that they're not done properly, or something that the hackers have found with Windows 10 that could be used for someone to get into their product, get into Windows 10 or get into the Mac. So there's a team in Microsoft that look at this, that keep across all of these threats and fix their own code. The antivirus typically doesn't detect this. The antivirus is a separate thing. It's got its own database. It's not normally going to detect an issue with Windows 10 because it thinks, oh, Windows 10, of course, it's fine. Windows 10 isn't going to have an issue. So let's say we've got an old machine. Let's say we've got a Windows 8 machine. It's very easy for me to Google this, Windows 8 vulnerabilities, loads of links, click on the first one. These are all the ways I can try and exploit or get into a Windows 8 machine. So for example, this one has a high score. I go in here. This is the description. And as a hacker, I'll just do a bit more research on that. And I know if someone's using a Windows 8 machine, this is what I can do to try and get in. This is why updates are really important. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention here, that a very common example was ransomware. So if we had some outdated machines running and using a remote desktop, so you're trying to log into your machine remotely, and just generally as well, so if the machine isn't updated properly, ransomware was quite popular and is still, I would say, fairly popular. But the NHS were hit by this very popular news story a few years ago because their systems weren't updated. So in ransomware's case, someone gets a new system, they'll start encrypting the files. So like our Facebook password that no one can read, now they've locked our files and they're the only people who can read our files. They then request a ransom in the form of Bitcoin. So if we have our machines updated, chances are you mitigate the risk against threats like ransomware or whatever the normal threats would be, or the up-to-date threats would be. With servers, it needs to be on at least Windows 2012, Windows SBS 2011, and Server 2008 were retired recently, so they have stopped receiving updates as of January this year. So if you're running this, then that needs to be off the network as soon as possible. Very common advice, up-to-date antivirus on Mac and Windows, very important. And on every single device, especially your personal devices, because this is what happens. This is your office, you've got your servers in here, other computers in here maybe. This is you working from home, so you've got, I don't know, 3 members of staff who are working from home. They have updates, they have antivirus, no issues here. But what happens if there's a personal machine that doesn't have, I don't know if it's running Windows 8, so it's running a system that's not supported by Microsoft anymore, so Microsoft are not releasing updates, or has a virus. It's the same analogy as coronavirus, so this will spread to the network, it will spread to the user's devices, and we don't want it to be something like ransomware. Now it's difficult, so if you call Lucidica now and say you have a personal device that you want to use on the network, we're not going to allow that device on the network before we checked that it's got an antivirus and that it's got that is updated as well. We will just simply refuse and not allow that on the network, just because of how important this is nowadays. So with your employees or your colleagues, you want to be checking exactly what device they're using to access their work resources. Nowadays it's a bit more difficult because we can pretty much log on to office.com, go to our emails on any device, on a mobile phone, on a tablet, on a 6-year-old phone. Anything is possible. So you want to get a good inventory from all our employees and say, look, you're using this. What's the version of Windows you're running? What's the version of Android you're running? That's the proper way of doing it. So we can do that. There's also a tool for this, which I love. So all this is doing is, it also applies to bring your own device, which is the same concept. It just checks any device that's coming into your network. So look, if you want to access some Office 365 data, I want to make sure of a few things. I want to make sure you're updated, you've got an antivirus, you've got a PIN. because the last thing you want is someone accessing your emails, your company emails, and forgetting their phone on the tube with a weak PIN or a weak password. Something like this can also block transfer of any work information to personal applications, and that's really important. So if your employees are using Outlook on their phone and they're accessing your company emails, we want to make sure that those emails stay within its within the Office applications bubble, so they can't move data between Outlook and Facebook or Outlook and WhatsApp, for example. So we're creating a bubble around all the company applications that they're using, and we can wipe the company data. So again, if the device goes missing, left on the train, someone's turned malicious, maybe, we want to make sure we have the ability. Legally, we need to make sure we have the ability, according to GDPR, especially if we've got sensitive information, to be able to wipe that device remotely. So in this case, if nothing extreme has happened, we just want to wipe this device. Maybe the user's using a different phone now, and we don't want to be touching their personal data. We can just selectively wipe our company information from this device. So this technology has come a long way. Okay, I think this is my last slide before we move on, and this is encryption. So if you want to guarantee that the emails you're sending, the sensitive emails, it's got sensitive content, is encrypted, and you're using something like Office 365, we should be using the encrypt function here. It depends on the license that you're using. So I'm logged in at the moment into a Lucidica account. We're on the license that gives us encryption. So for example, let's send an email to testlucidica2@gmail.com. Let's say it's a sensitive content. If I can spell, doesn't matter. And I can encrypt this. Actually, what I'll do is I will say do not forward. So even with encryption on, and we can take it a step forward and say this person cannot open this email. Cannot forward this email to anyone else. So that option is very important. Okay, I'll pull that screen over when that arrives. Now we have the same concept with documents. So similar thing. We can mark documents as internal. So if they do somehow end up on memory stick, or someone's email or someone's home machine, then they have to have your company's account to be able to log in and use that. So here's what the email looks like. I sent an email with do not forward permissions. So I'll open this email. I really like Office 365 encryption, just because if some of you guys have used Mimecast or the products, not necessarily Mimecast, just generic products, sometimes they'll ask you to create accounts, which I'm not a fan of. So every time you receive an email from a company, you have to create your own account. That's another password to remember and use. I just don't think that's as easy. So with this one, all we do is we click read the message, and the message just opens up for us. Again, I'll pull that back when it's ready. Here we go. So I click sign into Google again. And this opens it in a protected bubble. And the idea is this email's come to my Gmail, and I cannot forward this content or copy and print from it. So if I try and copy here, I can't right click. If I try and print this, it will be a blank email, so there's nothing to print. And the forward option is blank. If I want to reply, of course I can. And the nice thing about this is once the person replies, this person, the recipient, doesn't have to have an encryption license of some sort as well. The reply comes back in an encrypted fashion. So the whole conversation, once you've initiated it from 365 or another system you're using, should stay encrypted. Cool. So we'll move on to section 3, which is just a generic checklist of what we should be checking on a regular basis. And there it is. So number one thing is our router. This is pretty much what separates our office network from the rest of the internet. So we want to make sure that it's appropriate for use. So we really want to stay away from internet service provider routers. So BT router and TalkTalk router, you don't want to really use that just because they have limited functionality. Like not a lot of them can do lockdowns. So the router should allow you to lock itself down from a certain location. So at Lucidica, we have our client routers, and the only way we can log into those routers is if we're sitting at Lucidica or if we're on the Lucidica VPN. There needs to be a firewall audit with this as well. So firewall is what actually tells your network, okay, allow this. Actually, no, don't allow this. So that needs to be, I would say, once every 6 months at least. We need to make sure our VPN use is secure. So that's a technology called PPTP that's got confirmed vulnerability. So if we're using that PPTP for VPN, we should be using something else. If we're using remote desktop, we just want to make sure it's over VPN only, because remote desktop was open to ransomware. So if you've got an unsecure password, it's unlikely that something will catch onto the network if it's not over your VPN. We need to make sure our devices are encrypted, so our laptops, phones, whatever's accessing the company data stays encrypted. So that's BitLocker on Windows and that's FileVault on a Mac. When was the last time we checked our file permissions? So we want to make sure that we're auditing these regularly, just to make sure people who should have permission to certain things, and only they have permissions. Backup is very important again. If there is a total loss somehow, you know, if you've had ransomware, you had a virus on your system, the best protection against that is actually backup. It doesn't matter what's happened, doesn't matter what mistakes been made. As long as we make sure backup's okay, that puts us in a pretty good position. And this should be audited again, at least once every 6 months. Cool. So I'll quickly speak about how we can help and what our services are when it comes to small businesses. Just before that, I'm going to give you some cost here, so you get some sort of an idea of what these solutions cost. So something like a password manager. So these are per user per month. For a company-wide password manager, it's approximately £4 a user per month. That's I don't know, that's the price of a coffee to make sure everyone is storing the passwords properly. Phishing, so that's anti-phishing tool. We're sending training emails to our employees and colleagues, and also setting up alerts. All inclusive, that's about £8 a month per user. And then the general stuff, which is making sure the devices are encrypted and emails are sent in an encrypted fashion. Device management, so making sure that when something is accessing my network, it is secure. And finally, backup as well, which is part of security in my opinion. It's about £850 per month per user. So if you've got a 5-person company, I would say this is the bare minimum you want to be looking at. Even if you're a 50-person company, 5-person company, this is what £100 a month top up, which in my opinion is more than justified given the current climate. So this is the average cost of a breach, and I want to make this, I'm putting this in here because I think it's fairly important to mention. According to the government, if you have a breach, this is the approximate money you'll lose. So this is between small to medium businesses and charities, approximately 7K. If you come to us and say, look, we're having a breach, we want this stopped, we want to report, there's an auditor, we want audits here, it takes us roughly a day, and our daily rate is this much. Your time, I've just doubled our time, but in reality, you'll probably be spending 5 times our time. And if some of you've had a breach, you'll know what I mean. Reputation loss and client loss, nothing. So approximately monthly, it costs, if you're not taking security seriously, it costs about £825 a month. These are the costs of the solutions we spoke about, and at the bottom is Lucidica's cost. So password manager, again, that much. If you go for everything that we mentioned, for an 11-person company, it's going to cost about £213. For a 21-person company, it's going to cost £294. So there's tiered pricing here. That the more users you have, generally, the cost is less. But I wanted to compare this. So these are our security packages. The one I spoke about today was this. So this contains everything. So we've got our two-factor authentication. We've got our encrypted emails, ATP. We've got our alerts, backup. We've got a couple of other things in there like signatures and retention policies and a password manager, of course. So if you want to go ahead with this or just find out a bit more information, then speak to us. You don't, of course, have to go for this. There are other levels that we can speak about as well. But this should be something that should be taken seriously. And I hope I've made the case for that. This is my email address here. So we offer a consultation services, so we can sit down, one-to-one, discuss exactly what's happening in your company, what your concerns are. And this normally takes about 1 to 2 hours, and that's £150 an hour. If we come up with a solution and you want to go ahead with that, then we use that money for the solution. So for example, if you want to sign up to security packages, we'll use £150 an hour for the budget for the packages. Or you can sign up to one of these packages. We're giving a 25% off at the moment. And also because remote working brings its own challenges with security, we're offering a free password manager as well for 3 months. Oh, that's me, guys. Thank you so much for your attention. It's been lovely speaking to you all. Well, I've spoken to myself, but it's been lovely. I love this stuff. We will now take any questions that you've got. Okay, I've got an interesting one here. What if the password manager's hacked? Fair enough. We've got to trust these things. That's a number. This is the ideal solution. It's unlikely that a mainstream password manager leaks all his passwords. And the one thing you do want to be doing with a password manager is actually setting up your two-factor authentication on there. I think this is a bigger conversation, but as we have a master password, the one password that we log into, that we use to log into a password manager, it should then also be backed up with your phone. Okay. How do we report a fake or a phishing website? Normally, if the websites, it depends on which email system has received this. So for example, if you're using Office 365, I would say you can contact Microsoft and say, look, this is a fake email that I've received. Or if you have an IT company, then report it to them, and then they can add it to the block list for you. And then Microsoft or Google or wherever this is being added, if they realize people are adding this domain, these fake emails to the block lists, they'll realize that there's something going on here with this domain and they'll block those emails eventually. Why are these websites that you're showing us not banned? Because they're put forward as educational websites, and these websites, the reason I'm showing you this is just to show you how easy this is. This isn't very tough to do. The tools that hackers will be using will be slightly separate, but there's nothing stopping me now. If I turn malicious tomorrow, there's nothing stopping me now using one of these tools to send one of you an email. Of course, I wouldn't do that, and it's incredibly difficult to control these websites constantly because they pop up and then disappear. Should we be using a VPN for further security? Absolutely. So if you're trying to access, if you've got a server in your office and you're trying to access that server, that resource. Pretty much the only way you can ensure that that your access is secure is over a VPN. So VPN is an encrypted tunnel. It makes a tunnel between your house or wherever you're trying to access this resource from, and wherever the resource is, wherever the server is. So any traffic that goes, chances are, if someone's trying to, we call in the industry, sniff the traffic or trying to intercept the traffic, it's all encrypted, so they wouldn't be able to read it. So it's important that we're not using something like PPTP for VPN. And of course, just on that as well, it's important that we make sure our devices are up to date and they're supported by the vendor. So again, if we're using an app, Mac or app, should really be High Sierra, and Windows 10 should be at least 1809. Ads, SME, which sectors are most targeted? I think this is, I would say first of all, in particular, I've seen construction. These stats change, but the recent stats I saw, construction was fairly high. Of course, your accountancy firms, your doctors, your clinics, the people who have the sensitive information are targeted as well. But yeah, it's anything and everything at the moment. When I'm trying to do the recon on this, as if I'm the hacker, I'm sitting in, I don't know, a foreign country. All I'm looking for is our email addresses at this point, or I'll go to, I don't know, whatever my local directory is, or to that country, and just start going. And I create an email list, pretty much regardless of the industry at this point, and I send out a phishing email. So industry's almost not relevant, but I've seen trends, high trends at the moment with construction industries, and anyone who handles money in any shape or form, which is a lot of small businesses do, of course. Is it true that Apple Mac is more secure or safe than Windows? It's not. It's just a misconception. You know, if someone wanted and they knew what they were doing, they could easily use the same principles to get into your Mac. So if your Mac isn't updated properly, so it does depend on the machine. You know, if the machine isn't encrypted, it's not updated properly. If someone can get physical access or somehow try and get onto the Mac, then it's the same concept. And of course, you should always have an antivirus on the Mac as well. This just reminds me, actually, if someone, I just read this last night, but if someone is using the Zoom conferencing, you know, to make conference calls, that's been reported to have vulnerability. So if you're using a Mac and, you know, someone is somehow in your system, that person can control your webcam and mic, and say a similar thing with Windows, and that Zoom can leak your credentials, your admin credentials on Windows. So I would just look that up a little bit, and there are other solutions from Microsoft that we recommend for video conferencing. Okay, there are free password managers available. Are these safe? Free password managers are okay for your personal use. You'll notice a lot of these free ones don't let you share content the same way as a company one would do. And if you're using a free one, so if everyone in the company is using a free password manager, it's better than nothing, but it's almost a bit counterintuitive, and it defeats the purpose of what happens when the employee leaves and they've left with all the passwords. Plus, as an IT company, we want to see, you know, client A, their overall password score is 50. There is something going on here, so we need to go and speak to them. What is the best course or qualification for a small business to have? Any general recommendations? I think I'm happy to speak to you if you want to give me a call, but I would say if you want to just start, the place to start would be, of course, doing things that I've said today. So using a password manager, phishing, and general security, so encryption and device management. If you build on that, and if you've got these things in place, then you can start to look at some compliance. So you can start to look at cyber essentials for your business, which is basically a starting point for a small business or a medium business, and it says you get a certification once you've passed an audit that you have to do, and it says like this business has taken its security seriously. That's something that we help our clients with as well. And it's quite popular with small businesses. But I would say in practical terms, start with the phishing stuff, start with the password managers. Would you recommend as an alternative to Zoom? I would say something like Business Voice is pretty good. So we give that to our clients. It's a fairly new service. It's a similar cost to Zoom. So if you come to us and say, look, I want to use Zoom, we'll manage it for you as a similar cost. And this product actually can take over your phone system as well. So if you're paying for phones, you've got some equipment in house and you're paying BT, you can use Business Voice to make calls as well. Cool, guys. Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone wants to get in touch, then feel free to contact Alex or myself. And please do give me feedback if you've liked something, not liked something, if you thought something was horrible. Just let me know, please. I'd really appreciate it. And it's been lovely. Yeah, it's been brilliant. Thank you very much and stay safe. And I'll hopefully speak to you guys soon. Bye.